Gemma Wells, Treasurer Sarah Halbert, and Kate Harvard, Audit Wales.
Okay, great, thanks. Declarations of interest, any to declare other than those already submitted to the secretary, monitoring officer? I would refer to as company secretary. So I get confused because NHS have company secretaries.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Announcements. A couple of announcements. So welcome the new Deputy Chief Auditor who started on the 1st of December at Warwickshire. The two newly appointed ACFOs, Matt Jones started, Martin White will be taken up post on the 22nd of December, I believe. Wishing Dean a very happy retirement at the end of 2026, and also Brian. Is Brian in? Sorry. Okay. The appointment of a new Director of Finance, Liam Hull, who will join us in the new year. I think the 23rd of February.
Current date, yes.
Current date, yeah.
We're working on this.
Yeah, because it's unfortunate. I think it's something we try to take into account in lead times that you appoint someone, it's 3 months. Getting to that point, it takes 3 months. And the decision points to decide to go to there can take a little while as well. So to replace someone, certainly at the top levels, can take an awful long time. It just is.
Yes, and we would normally, however.
Yeah, it was a short
yeah,
notice.
short notice.
Yeah. So yes. Right. People services are implementing a new patient management system. Training for managers is currently being rolled out. The system will provide an efficient, streamlined occupational health case management system to enable a more streamlined wellbeing support to staff. Finance and Audit Committee approved work to commence on the target operating model for headquarters for an independent review of people services. This will report into the People Committee in the new year. Okay. And also a note to thank members of the brigade who been involved in the flooding. A lot of work, seen the news, a lot of work done in Monmouth. Monmouth seems to be, I was talking with the chief who's quite into meteorological phenomena. Monmouth is a tough sort of an area where the nature of the geography means that there's a heightened risk of flooding because of the running off the hills and so. And also, if you look around the world, thousands of people have been killed this week in typhoons and storms around the world. And we were just discussing earlier the difference between a hurricane, a typhoon, a tornado, and a cyclone. Not for now, I know. Yeah. The bit I did that is the most tornadoes per square mile in the world are in the UK. Now there you go. Most people say Texas. Right, moving on. Minutes of the committee for the 26th of September. Take accuracy first and then rising. Page 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Okay. Just a copy of that, and then the issues arising from it. There are 2 elements: the procedural reform project and the it's in there twice.
That's the heading of the paper under item, and then the action is in the action column. So we can set it out differently going forward if you.
No, I'm happy with it. It's just the current status.
Yeah, so the policies is a bigger piece of work, but your ambition was that for people services particularly would be visual in terms of I think it's described as being the sort of career life of a member of staff, and at each stage you'd be able to find your policies. I think the initial work was with IT to make sure they were accessible. There was a problem with the way they in there.
It is, yeah. So the policies are numbered as opposed to alphabetically listed. So if you're looking for a maternity leave policy, you've got to scan through a range of.
Yeah, you want to go through.
It's quite So this piece of work to update our intranet site and refresh how that information is shared.
So it's not a standalone piece of work, is what I'm trying to say. It's interconnected with other things.
So how long before we can look for on the?
Yeah, so what?
Yeah,
no, I can't give you a definitive date on that, and the reason is that it's the money for the intranet to get that upgraded, etc., and then the way we get the software enabled been running that to be able to find.
Does it come
policies.
within quarter four money? Or is it in the budget line for next year?
For the IT.
For the
well,
IT.
I don't think we know how much the cost is going to be
Yeah.
until Equity have done their final report. So
We've got
the
that.
setting out visually the policies might be, sorry, Lisa's going to help, but it might be something we can do some work in advance. I'm not sure.
So there is some work on the SharePoint site. So People Services is a guinea pig, and we're starting in January to create a new People Services site. So what we'll be able to do is create hyperlinks. So whilst they may be on the intranet numbered, we can create a link with a name so they can click on it and get to it that way. So it's a piece of work we'll be starting in January. So
I suppose the point I'm just trying to get to is
Yeah.
if we're going to monitor the performance,
Yeah.
we need to have something to register against.
Mm.
So if we said end of quarter one next year, then at least we can say,
Yeah.
oh no, it's slipped or he's coming in on, let's put something in there to hold the line to.
Yeah. So those two on that page are, as you just identified,
Okay.
connected. So end of quarter one.
And then, well, I guess rather than go through some of these are contained in reports. Yes. We just have, well, number 10 is bonus control. So if we just fill out the current status,
Yeah.
we know where we are. Okay. Moving on then, if you have focus now, decision. Gender pay gap. Who's going to speak to that?
Me,
Hey,
yeah. Do you need to know?
do you want to just give us a run through the key points?
Okay, no problem. Right. The pay gap has actually reduced, which is always a positive. There's there's things within that, factors within that, and it could be we exclude members of staff who are unpaid leave, career breaks, etc., because obviously you can't count for their pay situation. People who are on half pay, no pay sickness, you take them out because obviously it's not a full month, therefore you can't include them. Bearing in mind, this is all based on March 2025 data. So it's actually gone down this year. We are currently, or at that point in time, 11 more females than last year and 24 less males in the data that was provided, taking out those people that shouldn't be in there because we're not counting their pay as part of this process. So the males have gone up, but the females have come down in difference. So that when you look at median and mean, that actually skews that data anyway, or moves that data around because your midpoint is obviously going to be different. So that's all within there. We've also done comparisons with other brigades, and again, they haven't yet published their gender pay gap for this year because obviously there isn't a requirement to do so till the end of March. So I have used 24 data for that rather than 25 data because we have nothing else to compare it to. So that's what I've done on that one there as well. It is looking favourable with what we're actually doing, that the processes we've got in place, which Matthew could probably talk a little bit more on as to how we're trying to bring that gap down anyway, is working in our favour because it is starting to reduce down, which is good. We've had quite a few corporate staff who have obviously started, because they're predominantly female, their pay has started to increase more, whereas uniformed has a tendency to be more male, and their pay, unless there's a lot of people being promoted through the system, they do tend to remain quite static in the way that their pay is calculated. But corporate, some people have gone more part-time, some people have taken a promotion. So things have changed there within the corporate side of things. The median is slightly different because in 2024 we were £16.89 on our males and £15.82 on our females, and that has increased on the males slightly less than the female, which again could be down to the pay award that's been given, the number of females that we've taken on a corporate basis compared to males. So that it's not far out what we had last year, but there is a slight difference there. No, there's the quartiles then, which we go through. And that is quite complicated to show on a graph because obviously it's done on a different layout. Let me just read my quartiles a second. Yeah, here we go. So there was a decrease in the percentage of female employees represented in each quartile. The largest overall increase seems to be in the lower middle quartile. So those who were possibly grade 4s and up have now moved up into the more senior roles, and therefore that has moved them into the next quartile. So that is quite good because that shows that the females are actually moving up through the salary structures, which is a good thing for the service.
Quite a lot in here, and this is something we just have to report on, but I
Yeah.
guess it's the narrative explanations which are important.
Yes.
In order how we track what's
Yes,
happening, and that bit that you've just talked about there, why it's lower in one because it's higher in another. That's really useful to know. I guess on the executive team, with Sarah going and Liam coming, that
Will impact.
that's such small numbers.
yes,
One can make quite a
Yes.
difference, can't it?
especially if you've got higher paid people who possibly change the gender, or we've got vacant post is another one, because obviously that post, as you talked about, trying to get someone in. I know the director of finance didn't exist, but with the director of finance post, if you already had someone in there in 24, but you haven't got someone in it yet in March 25 when you're doing the figures, that can majorly skew that data because obviously it's quite a large salary and you're not actually accounting for it and paying anyone to do it.
Yeah. I mean, at school, me and Amelia always used to. But now, it's taken till now for me to understand.
Yes,
So thank you.
yes.
I've got just a couple of questions. I'm glad we've done the comparisons. So in terms of the narrative things supporting the comparisons, what are Kent doing that leaves them in such a good place? And even Avon are on a,
I'm not sure they use the same, because we're Welsh, we have our own gender pay gap criteria, and that is different to England. So for years, we were following the England rules of how we do it. However, Gemma picked up last year, Gemma Wells, that there is a Welsh way of doing it, and that's what they want it reported on. So,
government.
yes,
Right, okay.
so that's why they could be, we're comparing with English Brigades, but that doesn't mean they're following the same process of exclusion and inclusion that we are using.
So we would need to use the same mechanics to compare with Mid and West and North.
Yes,
But if we wanted to understand what that family group are doing, we would have to look at the numbers slightly differently.
yes,
Okay, so
Yeah.
but even so, that Kent are doing something, even within their family group,
yes,
makes them substantially stand out
Yes.
in a different way. That's
Yes.
really, so it'd be useful to know that.
But Avon's
So
got
should-
a much heavier female top team.
Right.
Kent has a female chief fire officer, I think, so I suspect
Yes.
the top team is all.
Yeah.
yeah,
So at Avon, you've got a
Yeah.
female assistant chief, a female monitoring officer, and a female head of finance officer. So half of the top team are female, so that's why that's an outlier.
Yeah.
Right.
And Kent, like you say, the chief exec is.
But on the graph 7, isn't that a whole brigade? That's the team. So when Kent at minus 4.7. How many managed to?
I don't know, when I looked at it, I thought, that doesn't seem right. But obviously, all I had to go on was what they published, but they say that they are literally minus 4.7. There were a couple of brigades, and obviously I had to pick a group, so I didn't do them all. Some of them reckon their pay gap is nil. How can your pay gap be nil? That's bonkers. But some of, they weren't necessarily fire service ones, because I have done some from authorities to sort of compare, but they were nil. I'm like, I don't get how that can be. You wouldn't have exactly the same number of males as females and all paid exactly the same pay.
You go to the NHS, you find it the other way around as well.
Yeah,
It'd just be useful to, to use your network,
yeah,
just to find out, because
no problem.
there's this, because rather than having to reinvent the wheel,
Yeah,
try and sit with the team and try and work it all out.
Yeah.
It's done something, and
is that initiative working? Do we
Yeah.
need to adopt that
Yeah.
initiative? Yeah,
it's not always literal lift and shift, because there could be context, which means actually that won't land so well here.
yeah,
But a lot of these things are, initiatives that we might not have considered, or
yes,
you know, for whatever reason, so it'd be
Yeah.
useful to get that.
Okay, no problem.
Diagnostic.
But I think from a head count, when you look at an executive team and you've got a chief forester who's a woman, that's going to make that as a recruitment tool, that's going to be quite helpful.
Yeah.
So that's probably from an ACFO perspective for our middle managers, where we're not in that area. Because when a woman looks at joining sort of South Wales Fire and Rescue Service, they're not going to see themselves in the higher tier. So it's something we need to sort of pay attention to.
Yeah, I was just thinking if you can argue it the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's that, yeah, all right. I don't mind having a chat about this sort of thing, because I think there are a lot of human factors involved in this. Why some people would go for a team where there wasn't someone representative because there's an opportunity and quite like the idea of trailblazing. Other people might feel that there's lots of the same people, but they have less of a chance because, you know, there's all sorts of different factors involved in this thing. It comes to people. Anyone else got anything to say? This has to be reported then, we're signing this off and then it has to go through the board of commissioners, isn't it, as agenda paper?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that duplication is something we will be addressing, because I've only ever seen it go in once to the fire authority. So I don't understand why it's going in once.
Okay,
So that will
probably
change.
it's the way we've always done it,
Mm.
so we could look to do it.
But-
I mean, we're more likely to kick the tires here
Yes,
on this.
but the tires should be kicked to everybody. You don't present it twice, so there's two opportunities to kick the tires. You know, it should
Yeah.
you should be efficient and only have it once.
Right, let's look into that. Pay policy statement,
Me again?
you're gonna give us the medium.
No, there was one for that. Right, basically the pay, let me log in a second. The pay policy statement is listing what we are doing or what we are paying individuals for the work that they do. They're nationally agreed, so they tend to mirror what other brigades are using as well. It's not like, oh, South Wales are different. However, we then put a little bit in there to try and encourage people to want to join the service. For example, we put in what our benefits are, what our employee benefits are. You get a free gym, you can park your car free, all the little peripheral things that might encourage people to want to work for us. So we put that in there. So when we're going out and saying, this is what we pay you, and we don't have any say in that. We have a say maybe in corporate staff, if we go through job evaluation as to how those can change depending upon the responsibility you're given in the job. However, we still follow a set pay structure agreed nationally that everyone gets paid on. So putting the additional stuff in about how we want to encourage people to work for us does help, because that might give you the edge over someone else. Maybe they're looking to work for a council. It might give them that little bit of an edge to come to work for us. But it is literally a statement of, this is what we pay.
When it comes to re-employment.
Mhm.
Makes, it sort of says what it is. But do we in general do this?
We can do.
We do.
On a small number, so
Right.
we do it, but the numbers are small.
I'm just in personal view, I mean, I don't really like it.
Mm.
I think it's bed blocking. I think if you've got people coming through the system and they see the person above them go out one day and come back in and they can't progress, it slows down progression. I understand the thing with specific skill sets, but that's a lack of strategic planning
Yeah.
in managing vacancies or throughput.
The big group of staff we tend to find that with is training. You will have a uniform training officer retire, but with all the knowledge they've got on driver training, VA, whatever that is, they then come back corporate and carry on doing what they're doing, but they've drawn their pension as well.
But we've had years to know that we're going to need driver training. It's not as if
Yes.
it's a cyber technicians.
No, but quite often they retire one day, lose the pay number and everything, draw their pension, and within 3 months they're back employed again, doing the training role as a corporate staff member.
I guess the issue is then, should they be corporate staff members from the get-go, and why do
Mm.
they need to be uniform, and do they, because the idea about being uniform is you've been taught to drive at a certain speed,
Mm.
which you could be a police officer, could be doing that, couldn't it?
Yeah.
You know, they don't tend to put pump in, do they? No, they wouldn't need to be even fire officers.
Yeah.
So I guess there's a thing about. So I guess if they're coming back on Green Book, it's a lot cheaper than.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
so that's a,
and it affords them part-time working, which Grey Book has a tendency not to do because
yeah, it does.
it's rare that you job share on a lower number of hours.
Not wanting to get into the weeds on it now, but I do think it's something that we should be thinking about. I mean, that seems like a corporate Green Book job, and we're using the way we've always done it
Yeah,
as to drive a fire engine or whatever. So
Is there there's usually a separate re-engagement, re-employment and abatement of pension policy. So I think we're delving into an area which is covered by a different policy. So maybe we share that with you offline.
yeah. Right. Okay. Then. Anything else you want to point us to?
no, that's fine.
I guess it's the same as before about this. This sign is not getting this to go
Yeah,
to the commissioners to
it's
start.
a good,
It does.
yeah.
I guess it's the same issue that relates to the previous one. People get quite into the pay policy statement. Lots of people find there's a thing about it, don't they?
Meeting the Welsh Government one for the Senedd because, to my thing, if they don't get it right, then it's sad. So I have looked at theirs and pretty much what we do with ours sort of mirrors what they do with theirs because I take them as the people who would know how it needs to be written. So it's not far off what they do. And I don't think there's anything in there that either shouldn't be there or things that aren't in there that should.
I don't know what I meant was that there are things here that people find really interesting.
Yes,
Particularly around the commission, you each find your own thing that you find quite
yeah,
intriguing or interesting. So,
Feels very detailed to me. It's much more detailed than the version of the in England. But, so it's just whether we could reduce the
I
burden.
guess it's not, is there a statutory requirement on us because it's in Wales, which is different?
no, that one is standard.
Okay, then there's something.
We might be able to save some work. That's
Oh, that would be good.
But I
Yes.
very much, I can show you the version we used to use.
Oh, brilliant, yes.
Great, thank you. That's for it's going to go. People, commissioners. The next one, item 8 on the agenda, inclusive action plan. Matthew.
Yes, that would indeed be me. So this report is for decision, and the report is looking to get the recommendations approved around how our strategic equality documents in the service operate. And this is the ideal time to do this because we need a new strategic equality plan as of 2026 and for the next 3-year period. So this is why we're looking at this now. As a background then, as a public sector organisation, under our public sector equality duty, we need to have a strategic equality plan. And that strategic equality plan we report on annually and to show our communities and our staff our progress under what our objectives were. So we introduced an inclusive action plan in 2023 to mirror that strategic equality plan. That decision was taken pre my arrival in post. However, the rationale being, if we have an overarching strategic equality plan, the inclusive action plan was the really detailed, really the granular of what we're doing to meet our objectives under the strategic equality plan. That was the rationale behind it. We've faced some challenges in the operation of the Inclusive Action Plan. The Inclusive Action Plan is broken down into 43 separate areas, and within those areas we have 146 separate actions. So it's a very 50-page document, it's very, very detailed. However, on its launch, there hasn't been, in my view, sufficient tracking of our progress. So I've tried to provide in the report an update on where we've been, what we've done. However, it's very qualitative data, anecdotal, has been good successes here. We haven't really had a methodology for tracking. I could tell you 70% of those actions are done. We lack that evidence because there was no tracking launched at the same time just to know are we meeting the actions that we said we'd do under our inclusive action plan. So we have got in the report some successes, but of course we need a balanced picture. So we've had some areas that we've struggled. So under the Inclusive Action Plan, we outlined we need to improve the way the service uses equality impact assessments. And that's an area that sits within people services. So it's easier to track because we know that we've met the vast majority of those actions there as they sit with us. And so we provided some detailed information in the report as to how we did that. We've also had a section on data collection, and this has had some successes in that we have aligned to the census. We've run a campaign on improving how we collect that and return responses. However, the difficulty is still that, as our stats say, for 46.25% of our workforce, we have no information at all about ethnic origin. And for, as an example, for religion and belief, 25% of the workforce have put I prefer not to say. So there's still some big gaps for us on how we use that information. And our Inclusive Action Plan wanted us to be a lot further ahead than we are. And so there are, and there are several areas that we've talked about: improving workplace flexibility for all. That's an action in our Inclusive Action Plan. So evidence around introduction of phase 1 of agile working. And there are anecdotal evidence there about things that we have done, but things we've struggled with. So one of the ambitions under the Inclusive Action Plan was to ensure that our systems are fully accessible by the end of 2026. And that is a very ambitious statement to make in our Inclusive Action Plan. I would suggest that we're not there at all. Well, not at all. Improvements have been made, SharePoint, things are coming, but we haven't met the timeline for that for sure. But we have got a step forward programme of digital transformation. And so we hope that will be the catalyst for those type of things. And so that's the picture of where we've been. And I want to come in the future and be able to say these are the percentages of where, that's green, that's amber, and that's red. And we don't have that at the moment on our existing plan. So given that, this made us consider how are we going to do this going forward then? This is the perfect opportunity. We need a new strategic equality plan. So how do we ensure that this is more effective going forward? How are we tracking it? And how are we being held to account on what we said we'd do? So we've summarised then in paragraph 1.4 and the things that we think have been difficult with the operation of our Inclusive Action Plan, to say these are things we need to improve. So it's 50 pages in length. And if we're getting a strategic document, I want employees and communities to read it. And at 50 pages, that is really long. And I think that could be a barrier for some people engaging with that plan. And a bigger barrier than that, I would suggest, is that the Inclusive Action Plan isn't actually published anywhere. It's an internal document to people services, which makes sense to us. We need to be all over that level of detail, but no employee could read that on the internet anyway. It's not published. So its utility for the service needs improving. I think our third area that we really want to address going forward, and with how these strategic documents operate, is that senior managers weren't really given the ownership of their areas. Dyson inclusive improvement certainly doesn't just sit in people services. It's for everyone to take their responsibility for their area, and we haven't done enough to ensure they're fully aware of the actions that sat with them. Finally then, and this is the real one that we're looking to improve going forward, is we had a strategic equality plan, but by having such a specific Inclusive Action Plan, it's sort of rendered our legally required document, which is the strategic equality plan, almost null and void, because we're doing all the actions here. How we report, why are we having that just overarching, almost aloof, woolly document, where you've got this really specific one here? It's the relationship between them we think can be improved. So what we are proposing then, to address those shortcomings that I've just rattled through there, and we are proposing at the conclusion of our Inclusive Action Plan, that being the 31st of March 2026, a new Inclusive Action Plan is not adopted. What we are looking to do is that what the aims and the ambitions of that Inclusive Action Plan we feel can be contained within a strategic equality plan. We want the strategic equality plan to be used more, it's more specific, it has more tangible actions that the Inclusive Action Plan was trying to do. Let's put that into our strategic equality plan and that be our central inclusivity document. Given that we're going to do that, that is our key performance indicators then for people services. We're tasked with them. We're doing Gantt charts. We are tracking objectives for us and for around the service under that strategic equality plan, how that's being used. We want every employee around the service to be linking their work to objectives in our strategic equality plan. We want that to say, I know that I'm undertaking this project and I can directly say how that links to our objectives under our strategic equality plan. We don't want this floating document that everyone's kind of aware we need to have, but not really linking to their work. And so the plan for our new strategic quality plan, then we'll pre-publish it with heads of department and with our senior leadership team. So there's that awareness of the things that sit with different departments to get that strategic buy-in, which perhaps our current documents have lacked. And then we want our leaders to be able to access that progress chart so that they can fill in where they are, where the gaps are, and how we can, people services can help them achieve what we said we would. A strategic quality plan needs to run for 4 years, and we have a structure of 3 years. We think 4 years is quite a long time. A lot can change in 4 years. So we are currently sticking to our every 3 years renewing one. So this one would run April 26 to March 29. So I was in an all Wales EDI meeting yesterday with our peers in Mid and West and North Wales, and it was reassuring to know that they are looking to either break cycle with their strategic quality plans or review how specific and tangible they are. We were all sharing learning and knowledge that some of our objectives, but the one that I pull out, one of our objectives is ensuring new ways of working to improve service delivery. How are we reporting on that? We have to report annually on that. What does that mean? What does that mean for our communities? What does that mean for our employees? That's quite a statement that doesn't have any tangibles. How could we be held to account to that? And Mid and West particularly were saying they have statements like that in their strategic quality plan. So they're looking to make really more specific, held to account that, and more, it's more tangible. We can really see those changes every year when we report on them. So we've gone through, and these ideas, these proposed changes have gone through our networks, our inclusivity networks and our DICE champions to get their steer. If they're, those documents are really important to them. So, what was their steer, and they support that we need one document that everyone can track, everyone can follow, and the service is held to account on that basis. Our new strategic quality plan will come back into these forums once it's fully drafted, obviously, for that to get signed off. So this paper is just about the change of the operation of how those documents fit together. But we have ideas on how we want this new strategic quality plan to function. And we have 3 objective areas. That is services and infrastructure, people and culture. And we want those to stay. We think those make sense. However, we're looking to split up services and infrastructure into separate areas. The service that we provide, I think, is quite different to our infrastructure to be able to provide that service. So we're looking to have services, infrastructure, people and culture, just to have 4 separate areas. Within that then currently, within those areas, we have 2 objectives. We're looking to simplify what is the key objective in those areas under people, under culture, that we want to achieve, that overarching objective for which our specific tangible actions will flow. We're also looking to improve how we use our data in that. We have currently 9 pages worth of statistics that aren't particularly useful, in that we have some for employees that we don't have for our communities. So we're looking to get pie charts, much more visually engaging. This is our demographic makeup of when it says the age of our workforce, and this is how it directly compares to our service area next to each other, so our communities and our staff can see how that represents. So our new strategic quality plan will look to improve how engaging it is, because comparatively ours is quite long. So we're looking to streamline, this is the document, this is what we want everyone to be following. So that is what we've proposed and are looking for thoughts and therefore approval to make those changes to the operation of those documents. And if we can approve how that strategic quality plan looks, we'll go away and ensure that our document comes back into this forum with the relevant detail that it needs.
So the approvals.
The approval is that we so the recommendations would be that our inclusive action plan, the way that is stopped, and we put, so the missing actions, the things we haven't.
So is it we say yes, is that enough? Does it have to go to the Board of Commissioners? Here.
Yeah, so the inclusive action plan is an us thing.
Mm.
The strategic quality plan does need to come in as a board of commissioners.
So you've been reporting on this for a while, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
This is the best report we've done. Best report we've done, not because it's all green,
Mhm.
but because it's red, amber, green.
Yeah.
So it's much more realistic. So thank you for that, because I don't mind seeing bad news. What I don't like was just seeing good news and knowing that it's failed the sniff test, because there's stuff underlying. So thanks for that. Just some comments then. First one would be, Alison did point this out, recommendations as 1C, I think, on page 1.
If that might be on our template then going forward.
Is one C, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, I think the point we make about 50-page booklet, people aptitude or willingness to want to read 50 pages, so there's a thing about that. I think we'll get people probably within 4 or 5 pages, and you can have the rest as appendices. If they're really into it, they'll read the rest.
Sure.
If they're going for a promotion interview, they'll read the rest, but generally,
Mhm.
they want something snapshot. And a lot of people access data on their phones or their tablets, so it needs to be sort of friendly in a way that they can trawl through that. I think when you use the word strategic, strategic needs to be accessible.
Mhm.
The organisation,
Yeah.
as opposed to, then because if it's sat in a department, it's not only a department, it's not being strategic.
Absolutely.
Because you talk about it's underutilised, well, it's underutilised, people can't get hold of it there's readily formatted that you want. So I think that's one thing. And I think if it was that, I think the idea about tracking is really good about the objective. I just wonder how many tracking systems we've got, because we've got the one that you've been using, which seems to be, I'm quite used to seeing how things are tracked. When people are overarching, looking at lots of different systems, and they're all tracking things in different ways, you have to try and get your head around lots of different tracking systems, and that means that, but it means something different in another tracking system.
Yeah, so this comes back to the SharePoint piece. So we presented to SLT, ELT yesterday around the progress for the PMO office, and that's heavily linked to the SharePoint site. We've done a scoping exercise on our existing BMIS system that does some of the management areas and some of the dashboards. So there'll be a decision to be made around whether we replace that system, whether there's a different system that the SharePoint can cover to achieve through Power BI and visuals and those key areas. Currently, the Monday software is a temporary tracking system for us to be able to track progress of these things. So hopefully pretty shortly we should have a SharePoint site which will improve our accessibility onto mobile phones, and we had a demonstration yesterday about how we can access some of those areas. People Service will be leading in that space. I've messaged the PMO team already to contact Matthew around the objectives in the EDI plan, because I think that we can put those into our initial scoping for projects so they're captured at that point.
Yeah.
And once we have SharePoint up and running, it should give people like Matthew the autonomy to be able to track those actions and his projects and then demonstrate that in a visual way. So it's around, we're in a temporary transitional period. We'll see that the services use SharePoint in a similar way to track their projects, but also track their actions in a similar way we've done to the recommendations.
There's an opportunity, if you start on a new one, then you can get the baseline data in. So, and I guess it's something for, because you're always looking at consistency across how we do these things. Having all these different tracking systems, trying to get it all under one format, change the way we do things to fit the framework rather than having loads of frameworks.
Sure. No, I get that. And even from an CSLT sort of tasker tracker, that's got an independence when it works on Teams and things like that. So there is a bit of a moment of where we can switch across to one unanimous sort of system to track everything.
Yeah.
We've got, I do get it.
Just to build on that, so we're looking at our performance management framework.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure whatever we do in the SEP space links across into one.
I mean, performance management framework is a
On that.
big thing that we haven't got nailed, in and nailed, actually, so we're gonna have to.
So we have a meeting next week
Yeah.
to revalue the metrics that we currently have in that space aligned to our prevention, protection, response strategies, and then of course the people strategy we'll put in there.
Okay.
We're also doing a piece around the culture dashboard, and I think Matthew's comments have prompted that we could potentially tie that in as we start to build dashboards properly. We could be able to maybe consider how that links in.
I think the specification for the HR finance system that we've currently done, it's about how many different ways you collect the data in the first place. So it's report once, update many, because at the minute we're updating a myriad of different systems, which is really, really time consuming and just inefficient. So report once, update many.
I mean, I've got two concerns. Yes. One's out. But it's, again, another project which is reliant on ICT.
Yeah.
You're going to go back to the language. We've got a lot.
It's a lot going on there. We had a really good meeting with Microsoft about data pools, rather than data lakes. I know it's a new word in new tech speak. However, to converge all that together, we are negotiating that even from an operational perspective of how that harnesses and sort of get through it. And that's going all the way back to data pools where you can access everything through an app. So that region's a lot of this work which is taking place here. It's just gonna take some time to do that. And following on, I know that alacrity has been mentioned, that it's like the saviour of everything, and it's not. But I think once we get that sort of level zero feedback from them, that will sort of harness a strategy and then a step forward programme of how we're going to do all this work as we sort of step forward over the next 12 to 18 months.
But I think digitising things allows us
Yeah.
to make a leap rather
Yeah.
than have a series of steps, because you can get. We haven't invested in loads and loads of systems, which are legacy systems. We haven't got them that way. We are able to completely catapult ourselves forward. So we're tidying all of this up.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that's really important. I guess the other bit, which is not in your control either, if we look at the progress we're making by split criteria in the quality update, and some things we've made good progress, progress gender, and other things around other diverse characteristics, we're nowhere. So I guess it's a really mixed picture, and when we're tracking these things, they would need to be split, because sometimes you can lose the red signs by absorbing it all into, say, just the diversity. Before you know it, we think, oh, actually we're in the amber green thing, and actually it's a complete spread. So we need to know where our thing. The last bit would be an observation point. I think about 6 pages of statistics or 9 pages would I would freak out. I couldn't. Some people would like spreadsheets, wouldn't they? So a lot of people like pies.
Yeah.
Nice. So more pies, more pies. So okay, so thank you for that. It'd be good to see this when it starts to all pull together in one document. So in terms of the approvals required here, does anyone disagree with the recommendations as set out? Yeah, okay, back on. Right. Moving on. Oh, the main event, May.
Thank you. Okay, so this report is for information and assurance, and it's a 6-monthly personal review update. The report is going to provide an update on the progress of our personal review so far. It's also going to outline actions that we've taken so far to promote and positively shift the narrative around PRs across the service, but also highlighting ongoing challenges that we still face in achieving timely completion, and also trying to change the narrative. And then I'll move on to the plan next step then to drive further improvement. So I asked that the commissioners note the progress made and the continuing challenges in embedding the personal review process, and then to support the next steps to strengthen accountability and engagement of our personal review process. So just a quick overview then. So this is our 2nd year of our one single yearly personal review. So basically before then we had 2 personal reviews that we had to conduct within the process. So that would be the mid-year and the end of year. But now we've moved to just one single review a year. Okay. Oh, I don't know whether you have to ask your question. This was because of feedback that we did have, and that's why we moved to the once a year. So this is the 2nd time. Ideally, best practice is that personal reviews are conducted within the first half of the year so that the objectives can align for the following year. But we have had challenges here because in the previous cycle, which was the first year of the single yearly personal review, there was concentrated effort in completion between January 2025 and March 2025, which is actually a 41% increase between those months, which meant a lot of those PRs were completed within those 3 months, which is the end of last year's cycle. So the challenge then is the timing of it, because it was the end of the last cycle that they completed PRs, or the majority did. There was quite a hangover or an overlap of time where the objectives potentially carried over to the new cycle. I sound like I'm making reasons for why we're not quite there with the progress, basically. So because of that, the hangover, the objectives are still continuing within this first half of this year's cycle. So as of 3rd of November 2025, we are 6.97% complete as a service. which compared to year on year to last year is 10%. I've just updated the figures for December as well now. So as of December the 1st, we are 12.19%. So that's almost 5% uplift already in that 1 month. Year on year, last year was 11.53%. So we are actually tracking a little bit ahead now year on year, but it is still only 12.19%. So what have we done so far this year is that then, so the actions that we've taken, so we've released updated PR line manager toolkits, which is now easily accessible, and also we've got streamlined versions as well, so like almost like crib sheets that are available as well. We've just published the new prospectus as well, which emphasizes the importance of PRs and why they should be conducted. We've, as a team, proactively promoted PR completion in various positive engagement pieces. So visiting stations, corporate inductions, new recruit inductions, promotional inductions as well, that we sort of embed the conversation around PRs and why they're important. And also including them in our leadership programs as well. So talking about why as leaders we should be embedding our PRs. Also have conducted 5 sessions of PR training sessions for line managers as well. Challenges. So there are quite a few. So I think I've already explained a little bit about the overlap. So the PR being completed primarily at the end of the last cycle. So people are still sort of working through their objectives, and potentially now would be a good time to review them. The merging of Leadership Academy as well. So like it has somewhat taken some of our, redirected some of our work. So where we could be sort of still out and about promoting or changing narratives on PRs, we have been doing quite a lot of work with the Leadership Academy. So temporarily that was limit our focus on some of our core L&D activities. There still remains a degree of resistance and negativity towards the PR. So that is always a challenge, especially when we go and try and sort of promote the completion of it. We've recently had software issues, so where for whatever reason there was a bug in the software system and we couldn't reassign line managers to the appropriate delegates. Which potentially restricted line managers from accessing the PRs that they had to do, so therefore not being able to complete the PR in a timely manner. We've also had some absence as well within the team. So our main driver of the PRs in the team was off for just under 3 months, which is half of the reporting period. So it has affected some coordination and overall progress in the drive, and also affected the levels of engagement where normally we would have more people out and about and, shouting about the PRs. Also, there is no clear consequence of not completing a PR. So we just need more accountability on that part, because I think last year we were around approximately 60% complete, and what sort of happened to that other 40% that didn't complete, and the line managers there. That's that bit. And then finally so we are or have been reporting on potentially some duplicate PR numbers. So there's around 233 people in the reporting that hold dual contracts at the moment. Some of them, if they don't plan to progress in sort of their secondary roles, they don't need to complete that PR, and that is something that we communicated regularly, which means that we can remove that PR, so that removes that from the reporting. But because there's uncertainty with the individuals of whether they want to or they don't want to progress in those secondary roles, that's just been left in the reporting, which potentially means the reporting has duplicated some of the numbers. So that's a next step action for us, which is what I'm moving on to now, next steps. So next steps then, so we are proposing to reintroduce the mid-year PR. as I discussed it earlier, potentially because there's no mid-year PR now, people are forgetting about it, even though we are trying our best to sort of go out and engage. They're not doing it because there's nothing sort of reminding them. So with the reintroduction of a mid-year PR, potentially, you know, people are saying, right, need to do it mid-year now, and then I know that I need to track this then 6 months later at the end of the PR period. We're going to have more structured and supportive approach with PR completion and involve the people services advisors. So with our restructure, they now have designated unitary authorities that they can help guide, support and coach the SNs or crew managers and watch managers in completing their PRs and helping us change the narrative there. So it's not just sort of focus on the PR, on L&D changing that. So help with the compliance and also the change in narrative positively. Also to enhance our engagement by transparently reporting on the data. So sending clear performance progress updates to group managers and station managers, because that's where the bulk of our personnel are, and highlighting the progress, completion rates. And also I recently designed like a league table so that they can sort of see where they stand across the other stations, which could promote healthy competition. Also asking sort of for clear expectations from senior managers. So clear expectations in that you as a line manager need to be completing your PRs because of X, Y, and Z. Not just because it's a tick box exercise or that it's for compliance reasons, because that is some of the feedback that we've heard, but actually really explaining why we need to develop our people and have those honest and open discussions. And there is work around those dual contracts as well. So the team are going to be reaching out to those who have dual contracts to see whether or not they want to progress in those secondary ones, and then leaving them make the decision on whether to remove that secondary, so that we don't include that in that reporting. And then finally, to reinforce the requirement that all managers are to insert in their management objectives that we complete the PRs, and just to discuss performance objectives across the year aligned potentially with the promotional process as well. As I said at the beginning, recommendations just for commissioners to note progress made and the continuing challenges of embedded personal reviews, and to support our next steps in strengthening accountability and engagement for the personal review.
Okay. But just some questions.
Yes.
So on the dual contracts, are we talking about a whole-time firefighter and an on-call firefighter?
Yeah.
Yes.
That wouldn't apply in terms of dual contracts to someone working here at quarters as a corporate staff and then doing on-call. Is that a dual contract?
So that's a dual contract, but then they might want to progress in both roles. So the primary role, whichever it would be, would have to stay on the PR because they have to have a PR for that primary role. But if they don't wish to progress in their secondary, then that can be.
So I get it if it's a firefighter, there's a bit of firefighter's role as a firefighter's role. But if someone is working in, I don't know, an accounts department and they're on-call firefighter, they're two completely different jobs. And we want to be able to have them as part of the performance management framework in those two roles. So that shouldn't be split, should it? Because the way it reads is that it would.
Yeah, so the way that we have done it historically is that we do give them the option because it's to check their well-being and obviously their aspirations. So if they don't have any aspirations, say for the on-call, then they would have had that one touch point at least so that we know that they're okay. But what I would say is when we do have those, they more than likely don't remove their secondary contract.
Yeah.
It's if they full-time and
I think the whole time on-call, the dual contracts, but if you're doing two different jobs, the line manager should be managing their performance, whether they're doing accountancy day job or workshops or whatever, and then on call, because you wouldn't want someone to say, actually, no one's ever done a performance review on the I've been on call. We don't know how well they're doing, so we need to differentiate between those dual contracts.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
First bit. I think when you talked about tracking progress, we can also track progress and sickness, which we'll come to later, but we don't need lots of different tracking systems. We do almost like one station thing where it says station X is doing this, 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 and this. Like the what do they call it? Dashboard for a station.
So we're creating station dashboard.
We are, right,
Which-
rather.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
PRs,
Fine.
disciplinary grievance.
Good. I think it's good that you've got the mid-year point coming back in, because I think that was the previous person that got rid of that. Yeah, they didn't know what they were doing. So, and when I read it, I thought, 6 monthly personal review updates. That means we're doing them every 6 months. Full six.
Oh, no.
No.
Sorry.
And the template only has one C, so you obviously got the better template. Right, so in terms of they have, these can't be hockey sticked, can they? So that all of them come in the last quarter.
No.
They need to be done at the start of the year,
Mhm.
because then you can measure the performance during the year, and then at the start of the following year, you then say, how'd you do after having had your midpoint review?
Yeah.
But the bit that we haven't got, and it's not, is a whole performance management framework system, because that's the reason why there's no consequences to anything, because there's no performance management framework, so nothing happens if you don't perform. So going back to the previous reports, that's why we need a performance management framework, and this would be on it. And whilst there should be support from people services to this is the responsibility of the line managers and the individual to make sure that it is completed. People services are there to provide support, guides, not tell them they have to do it. They're supposed to do it themselves, and everyone should be managing people below. I think we're quite soft when it comes to consequences. So you could have things where people are quite emotional if they got one. That all the people under their responsibility, if they haven't completed them all within the time frame, they can't apply. If the person who is looking to apply hasn't had their one done, they can't apply. I mean, these are procedural things which would help. You could get down to annual pay or spinal point increments. I mean, these are all things that other organisations will do. If you don't do these things, you can't access pay. In the NHS, if doctors don't have their annual appraisals, they can't access their spine points in terms of payments. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but there are these principles do exist in the public sector. Because, and I can understand where if there's a degree of resistance and negativity towards PR, you can understand why they would say, actually, I don't want it more than once a year, and I'll have it at the end of the year. Because it's no good having it at the end of the year saying, how do you do? Because they've already had the year to do it. So people, and it's also how it's viewed. If he talks about the well-being of it, that's an important aspect, because people see this as punitive. Actually, it's not. It's a mechanism by which the organisation can judge its own performance. The individual can understand, do they need additional support? How are they doing? They could be doing really, really well, and that will be part of them being able to demonstrate why they could jump a promotion round to the next one. Because they would, at the moment, we say that so and so in whatever department is doing really, really well. How do they prove it? And what does it mean? And how do they use it?
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah, just to update this morning, we've been talking about our promotion processes with our ops colleagues, and one of the levers will be that you have to have had a PR
Right.
to access the promotion process. So one part is the scorecards, the metrics, but there's also a leadership role here for us, to kind of make sure our people are doing these things.
So go through reason about it, give them a reasonable time frame, but everyone knows they've got to do it. You just get it done, don't you?
Yeah.
So there seems to be an unhappiness or unwillingness of these face-to-face conversations, whether it's about performance, whether it's the return to work interview. It's something where people don't front up these things, because the most important relationship in the organisation is between the individual and their direct line manager.
Yeah.
So the responsibility of the line manager is to manage, do these things.
Chair, on that, so we did the Helen Isles training with line managers, which had really positive feedback. There's been 3 modules, we're just finalising the 3rd module now. And some of that was around having challenging conversations and documenting them, so we touched on the PR.
Right.
One of the things we're doing in people services is we're developing a full-day workshop with station commanders in particular around reflecting on the Helen Isles training and how that's brought back into their role. So doing things like return to work interviews, managing sickness absence, having those difficult conversations and doing the PR as well. So that's planned for January. So that's a full-day session with us and station commanders, reinforcing all of these things and all of the learning that they've had over the last year and how it plays into their day role.
One final thing. Did you want to say?
Yeah, I'll pick it up.
One final thing, it's a general comment on one of the reports. On page 73, 4.6. The recent software issues affected or are being addressed. Okay. So, so being addressed against the whole IT thing, but there needs to be dates and times there, because it says we identified the bug as problem. Now it says it's being addressed. When will it be? And that would be
So at the time I wrote the report, it was being addressed, but it has been since obviously addressed. So I didn't have that, yeah, it's been resolved. But I didn't have an end date, sorry, to put in when I was writing.
Yeah. So all these things with the time thing, you
Yeah.
need to have some sort of date, a ballpark date, just so that we know it's this quarter, this financial
Yeah.
year, next year, it's a 2-year thing. But otherwise, we then lose track of it. We're not performance managing in ourselves. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, actually, no, just to pick up a little bit of what Meg was talking about that. We talk about this every year, don't we, when we have the PR results come in and we talk about, what's the challenges, what's the risks. And some of these things just come around every single year, and then we watch it happening every single year. I think for me, when I'm out on stations and talking to operational firefighters on PRs, we have those conversations, tend to target obviously the watch officers, so your watch manager, managers, we'll have that conversation with firefighters as well. But what I tend to have pushed back on me sometimes is around particularly career firefighters, the ones who are not interested in promotion. And they say, well, yeah, I get the well-being element where we upfront it and you have that conversation and say, well, I spend 48 hours sat next to this individual every single week. So we constantly have those conversations. Why do we need to record it? I think it's a bit more prevalent than I want to call in particular, because that's 2 hours a week intervention.
Yeah.
We only got 2 hours a week with sat down with an individual. I think it's more prevalent there. The one thing I was going to ask me was, when we do the objective setting in the PR, so I think one of the measures for me, maybe it's more as you get higher within the organisation, you have more responsibility, is do we evaluate the ones that have been carried over each year? Because some of those objectives could be very short term. But I think as your responsibility becomes bigger, you have more medium and long term objectives. So we might see more carryover objectives. I don't know if we aim to monitor it and measure, we can't.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So anything that's not complete within that that cycle, it'll automatically carry over to the next one.
Right. And my other query was around, promotional process. I think for me, just my personal perspective, I think it's essential that it's part of the criteria is a personal review. The only challenge that come with that is any external applicants, because obviously we're having far more external applicants than coming processes. And I think the consequence bit is just a consideration. We'll always be look at the CPD element as well as a lever.
You might find that external applicants, the other way around, they've all got their PDRs in place and lots of that's training.
Yeah.
But I guess just picking up on that point, James, I think they're well made. About the career firefighter. But equally, if there was an accident or there was something, then say, when was the last time your line manager spoke to you? Did you complete all your training? How was your performance on the fire ground? How was your relationship with your colleagues? We'd want that, because that would be called for. And if we said, oh yeah, we didn't do it because they're going to be here for 30 years and we don't need to speak to them.
Yeah.
So it's the onus is on them to, it's you. Because if we excluded them, they'd say, why am I being excluded? I might want to go for promotion in 3 years' time.
Yeah.
Can I?
Sorry, but it also provides, it also provides a good case for somebody who's underperforming.
Yeah.
So you use that 6 month point to set their objectives, and if they don't meet them,
Correct.
then they're accountable within the report. So
Yeah.
it's both ways. If
Because you need to know where you are in the midway point to know whether you're on track.
Mhm.
Because if you're way off track, then that's the whole purpose of the midway policy, to sort of say X and Y.
Yeah.
Wait until the end to say you missed all your targets. It's no good. So
Yeah, so I've had quite a lot of that feedback as well. So career firefighters, they don't want to progress and what have you. But that, like, the understanding needs to, well, it's not just about progressing, it's about personal development, but then also performance. So like, you, even though I sit next to Matthew every day, you know, I don't know how he's performing. We talk about well-being, that's fine. It's, you know, you and they don't write it down. So like in that Helen Isles training, anything written down is going to outweigh anything that's verbal anyway, if it does get to court. And I know that these PRs get pulled a lot in that realm. So yeah, it's just all of that. I think we need to just get out there a little bit more.
I totally agree. I think, you
Yeah.
know, you've got to support this, I mean, whatever position you are in
Yeah.
the service. It's just some of the narrative of
Yeah.
fact, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
it's
all the
just,
time.
when we come to some of those
yeah,
arguments.
some people say if they say no, we won't do it. So actually, we just need to keep saying. Here
Yeah.
we are. 3.
Did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to add, of course, it's performance and behaviours, isn't it?
Yeah,
Those,
yeah.
those are so important for us as an organisation. Just about that.
Yeah, just coming back on Lean's point around the feedback around, you know, taking time out. One of the things we've explored a little bit in the last year as well is around the mechanism, the actual facilitation of doing the PR. So you can find, you know, sat in front of a laptop or a PC, it can be quite, it inhibits a frank conversation. So we've done things like walking PRs, where we've actually gone and done the PR walking around, but then come back and documented it, because the system times you out anyway. So inevitably is you prepare for it, you conduct it, and then you follow up and put it back in the system. So being quite innovative in how you facilitate the PR itself. And that's one of the things that the advisors will be working with line managers to encourage different ways of actually accomplishing it. So your point about they sit there and they talk to them. I think when I first started, one of the group managers said, you know, I do these anyway. Yeah, you do, but just put it in the system for us.
I mean, something you talked about, you don't know how the person next to you is performing. So
Well, I do, it's brilliant.
WL Gore. You go to Gore-Tex.
Yeah.
So WL Gore, they make stuff. It's a place in Scotland. And as part of the brigade command course, they took us up to see this factory. And all the managers up to, I think the directors, are all voted for by the people. So you vote for your line manager votes for their line. So on. So the whole thing's a very democratic sort of thing. But they're really hot on performance. So if you're making X number of garments, you have a machine, say you're sitting in front of it, and there's a score of how many you've got right, how many errors you've made, and your performance stats are on your machine. And everyone can walk past and see that everyone knows everyone's performance. I mean, you talk about that's not a hierarchical organisation. They're all votes, they're all worker voters.
How many disciplinaries have you done?
Whether one person is doing much better than another person is doing, you know, who's pulling their weight and who's not. So these systems exist, and that's, I don't know how they took us to show us that, because they said, you think because you've got a rules-based and an order-based system that you can get things done. Well, this is an organisation with very few rules, and they get loads of things done. And everyone wants to work at that place.
Yeah, that's sort of what that league table's like as well, though, because everyone else sort of can see everyone else's progress.
Yeah, so I think the league table thing needs to be around competition, not around blame. It's about.
Oh yeah, no, it's not about playing.
We
Yeah,
love league tables. If you're one of those people that like football, and I'm not, they love a league table, don't they? They're always talking about where they are in the league. Everything is based on league tables.
We found it when we, and I'm going to come on to it in the next report, but when we launched the station level sickness absence rate, suddenly there was a bit of, oh, hang on, I'm quite high on mine, I want to get mine down. So instantly it created.
Peer pressure is useful.
It's like the gender pay gap. We've compared with other brigades. How are they performing so well and we're not? So then we start to look into it.
Exactly.
If you haven't done that process, then it doesn't encourage you to go, so what are they doing that I'm not?
Yeah, there is a thing about if you just measure yourself against yourself, you're never going to know what you're doing well at all. So, okay then, sickness. Do you having it?
No, for you said side.
yeah.
Did you volunteer or was he volunteered?
I'm told.
Dictionary, I don't.
I think that's safe for me that you can know if the person who's on leave, so.
Right, yes. Right.
So
There's a couple of things. Did you want? Please, sir. Right. Any problems? Were you meant to Caerphilly then?
Yes, yeah.
Has he improved? Has he got to 14 or 15?
Oh, no, yeah, no.
Oh, so I'm training, tell him I'm coming down there again.
Oh, exactly. That's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. Right, so can we take the report first and then we'll.
Yeah, okay, so firstly, apologies, I just picked up that there's a error there. So the sickness absence data that have been provided within this report is actually for April 24 to March 25. So the recommendation is that the members of the board, that the people committee firstly note the content of the report and also comment on the future work and challenges that are set out within this report. So what we've done is we've got a comparison of our annual sickness. We've broken it down into long-term and short-term. But it's just that we have excluded Mid and West Control Staff Agency, secondments, HDIM contracts, seasonal workers, USAR and auxiliary out of the report. We've also got in here a comparison of between other fire and rescue services, how we are comparing to those both within Wales, but also now across the rest of the UK. And there's also further analysis of monthly sickness stats, which for the first 2 quarters of this year, so up until the 30th of September. So the issues that we are facing, so if we just have a look at the overview, so the total number of shifts lost in 24-25 was 30,695, which we have seen an increase slightly from 23-24, which is outlined in Appendix 1. Our average number of shifts lost for our full-time employees for 24-25 was at 15 currently for last year, which was again an increase from 23-24, which was at 13.3. We have seen a decrease in the number of shifts lost on days lost with our corporate staff in 2024-25. And then we've also seen a slight increase again in our control staff sickness. We did see for 24-23 and 23-24, we did start to see a decrease year on year of sickness absence, but unfortunately in 24-25, we've seen that trajectory back with increasing. Short-term absences for 24-25, there was a total of 5,947 shifts lost, which again is a slight increase from the previous year, which was at 5,490. For long-term sickness absence in 24-25, there was a total of 24,748 shifts lost, which again, there's a slight increase from the previous year, which was at 24,178. Musculoskeletal and mental health remain our top 2 reasons for sickness absence, and that's been consistent over the last few years. However, in 24-25, we did see a decrease in the musculoskeletal absences, but unfortunately, we did see a slight increase in our mental health related absences. And in 24-25, the most reported reason for sickness absence for mental health was stress and cited personal issues, which accounted for approximately 68% of our mental health absences. So if we look at the first 2 quarters of this financial year,
The average number of shifts lost by the end of September of this year was at 10. And the total number of absences has increased in September up to 296 number of absences. 69% of our absences in September, by the end of September, were due to long term, and 31% were due to short term. However, if we compare the end of September 2024 to this year, our long term absences are lower in September of this year compared to last year's. Again, musculoskeletal and mental health remain the top two reasons of absence in our first 3 quarters. And in September 25, 40% of our absences were mental health related, and 31% were as a result of musculoskeletal absences. Again, we are continuing to see a continual increase in our mental health related absences throughout the year. Unfortunately, if we're breaking it down through my UA, Merthyr and RCT have consistently had the highest levels of sickness absence, and Newport and Monmouth remain the lowest for the unitary authorities. We are seeing consistency in age profile. So the younger generation, the younger employees are reporting less sickness. We are seeing a constant between certain age brackets between 35 and 50. We are seeing the highest levels of sickness absence between those age ranges. We are reporting now as well on outstanding return to work interviews. They have continued to decrease since July 2025. I think there was over 200 at one point at the start of the year, and we now are under 200. So we are seeing it consistently going down, and I'm hoping to see that continuous downward with that. Ill health retirements. So in 23-24, we had a total of 14 ill health retirements, and in 24-25, there was a total of 9. So there's been a decrease there. When we compare ourselves to other fire and rescue services, firstly looking at our Welsh counterparts in Mid and West and North Wales, our service does have the highest levels of sickness absence compared to the other 2 Welsh fire services, which is outlined in Appendix 3. October 25, we started reporting into the NFCC National Sickness Absence Report, and we are the first Welsh Fire and Rescue Service to report, and we are currently the only Welsh Fire Service reporting into that data. We've actually yesterday had the first report where we are now included in there for Q2, so obviously I haven't been able to provide the data in this report, but I will share the members around this table after the meeting for your viewing, just to see where we are. Unfortunately, there's some bad news and good news within that report. So in that quarter, if we compared ourselves with Q1, I think we came second on that table. For WDS sickness, we have now gone up to the top highest level of sickness absence in our whole time, compared to the 40 fire and rescue services that can report into that. The good news is that if we look to time loss due to accidents on duty, we are the second lowest out of that. So we are doing well in regards to our accidents on duties, and our corporate staff sickness is down at the lower quartile of those reports compared to other FRSs across the UK.
So the home is a more dangerous place than the fireground.
Potentially.
Okay.
So if we look at Q1 of 25-26 of the NFCC National Data Report, at that time there was 37 services that provided their sickness absence data, and again, I think all services looking at that report are seeing the same issues with the mental health and musculoskeletal being the top 2 reasons for absence. And like I just said, so the Q1 report that was provided, London Fire Brigade had the highest levels of sickness absence for WGS, and then if we were to place ourselves there, we would have been second. But unfortunately, we have gone to the top of that table based in Q2. So there's recently been a report published by a gentleman called Sir Charlie Mayfield, who was the lead reviewer of Keep Britain Working, who identified that employers face an estimated £85 billion a year loss in output and costs linked to ill health, and that employers identified that employers need to do more in preventative measures around that. So while they've the report encourages employers to work along early intervention and prevention work, and looking at supporting disabled colleagues as well through reasonable adjustments, which I think we do well as a service. We do have some challenges around that, more particularly with our operational colleagues because of the type of role that they are carrying out, and obviously the lack of non-operational roles that we are able to bring them into. They also recommended completing structured return to work plans. Again, I think as a service we do quite well in that area. Particularly we've got case review meetings that we hold, so where we get recommendations from our occupational health team where somebody could come in on adjusted duties, or if they need temporary redeployment to support their rehabilitation, then we would hold a case review with key stakeholders to put a structured return to work plan in to get that person back into work and rehabilitated to be able to get back out to their substantive role. So progress to date from April of this year to November. So what we have done to try to support and reduce our sickness absence. So we have reviewed our attendance management procedure, our medical redeployment, reasonable adjustments and modified duties. They are currently with our trade unions. They've sent to the trade unions on the 10th of November for consultation, and we've asked if they would be able to provide us with feedback by mid-January, in a view then that we, with agreement that we would be able to get that out. Alongside the procedures, then we'll be looking to create toolkits to support line managers in implementing those. We will also be looking to create enhanced training packages to support those new procedures, because there's some changes that are being made on how we are addressing sickness absence and modified duties. On the 15th of October, I took a paper into SLT to look at introducing a healthcare benefit into the service. So there was provisional agreement in SLT on that date, but it's just a little bit more work that will be done, further research, and then looking to bring that back in for further approval. We've talked about the dashboard. So in early 2025, I introduced a sickness absence dashboard, which was initially for our ELT and SLT members and also group managers to monitor the sickness absence. And then on the 6th of November, we launched the station manager sickness absence dashboard. So station managers now have a full view of the sicknesses in their stations, including outstanding return to work, so they can closely monitor there. Our people service advisors are working with line managers to address unacceptable attendance levels, and that's being done through our trigger point process. So this is ultimately, so if somebody has an unacceptable sickness level, there's a potential to lead to formal warnings being issued, and could also result then, dependent on the warning that they are issued, there'll be a removal of their CPD payment for operational colleagues. We did touch on it at the start. So on the 17th of November, our occupational health unit launched a new patient management system. I'm also working closely with our occupational health professionals to identify opportunities for employees to be able to return to work on modified duties. And we're also looking to repurpose the Your Health Delivery Group to be a more effective body to address the issues around sickness absence. So we had a meeting on the 25th of November to review the membership. We've agreed the key members that we need in that group. So we've got 6 stakeholders that we are going to have in that group, which will then feed into other boards that are provisionally planned to be created. And then the last, so as part of the launch of the new patient management system, there's been a new section added in there for managers to complete when they refer people in, to try and identify are there any modified duties, such as, you know, if there's more homework and if needed to either support that person remaining in work, or to be able to try and bring them back off sickness absence earlier. So our future plans for the next financial year is the consideration of flu vaccination for our employees. In September, we did see a spike in cold and flu related absences. We're going to look at the introduction of sickness absence targets with the aim of us being in the lower quartile, particularly for our operational staff within the NFCC sickness absence data report. Colleagues in occupational health, so our health and fitness advisors have been working on a service cookbook, which is promoting nutrition, healthy eating, which will also have the opportunity to share recipes and ideas across the service. There'll also be different range of dietary needs, so gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian, things like that. So they will be able to be purchased in the new year, with all proceeds from those cookbooks then going to the firefighters charity. We're also looking to implement a service suicide prevention procedure and supporting toolkit. Also, the health and fitness advisors are looking to introduce a pre-course fitness assessment for our firefighters. So before they actually come into the service and start their course, if they're not at the required level at the P&P day, they will then work with those individuals on building up their fitness in readiness for them to start on initial course going forward. And they'll also be looking to improve musculoskeletal health through targeted strength and conditioning sessions. And that will be available for all staff across the service. And that's it, yeah. So it's just asking that to just note the content and then comment on our future plans.
Just a couple of things about, thank you. How do you define short-term and long-term?
So short term is 28 days or less, and then long term is 28, anything over 28 days.
Good, thank you for that. So just a couple of observations to go through it. Charts, I think, are really good. Yeah. And I think figure 4, because when we looked at this at the pre-meeting, we looked at our whole time days lost. We were reporting 1.9. That's right up in the top of the London 5 again, didn't it? So, and the Q1 data, we're at the top.
We've now moved to
So, so it's useful to compare us against other organisations, and that's just bad on every level, isn't it? That we are. The reason I asked about the difference between short term and long term is because we hear a lot about the sickness levels and leave and things. Leave will address short term sickness. Leave wouldn't address long term sickness in that way, would it? Because it's 28 days. And when I did a quick calculation, I added up the number of short-term days and long-term days, and I think it comes to 30,000 days in total. I accept this is across the whole organisation. But if you looked at people working a bit more than 2/3 of the year, we're looking at over 125 posts in the organisation just to cover sickness. That's a lot of people. And then you add the salary against that. We're talking quite a bit. And what it does is if it's 125 to 150, so that's almost 8 to 10% of the organisation. And then you look at our sickness rates, in some parts we're at 13%. So they marry up that quite a chunk of the organisation that we've got is just to cover sickness. So that's, for me, that's setting up the context of it. And then looking at, I thought it was interesting that the number of injuries due to service injuries is low. What the lowest number of those. That's a really good thing for health and safety, that we've got the right systems and places and procedures out in the workplace. But, you know, completely the other side of the coin when it comes to people managing themselves. So we need to understand why that is, which kind of brings us to why we've got you guys here. So appreciate that there was someone else due to come and someone's picked the short straw and you've ended up coming because someone else was supposed to be covering for them, or
No, I think I was always coming.
okay.
I'll say had the short straw. They volunteered.
So
Sorry, before you comment, I just want to say, I think we've got a whole system problem here. We've got sort of anecdotal feedback that where staff can't get their PHs or whatever time off, you know, they've requested, if that's refused, they are booking sick. There's also, we've been chatting about some of the categories of sickness, and having a little look at that. There are people who are, here's an example. So an individual is caring for his very sick wife. He's booked sick himself. He's not sick. So that there's a bit more of a deep dive we need to do in terms of, you know, what our people are turning to because they need help, time off, support. So there is a whole system problem here. I just thought I'd make that context before you comment.
So-
I think that's illustrated in the mental health is personal related.
yeah, so there are always going to be people who've got really awkward, terrible personal circumstances, and we're not looking really at those. They're sort of outliers. We're looking at the sort of core, you know, in a standard distribution curve, it's that core group of people that we're looking at. And I guess there are, when you look at the data and the tables, there are consistent differences. So when you look at figure 5, page 86, you've got Newport and Monmouth consistently for the whole year are along the bottom, and you've got others who are consistently along the top within the same brigade. So there's something different going on in just within 10, 15 miles difference. It's trying to understand what that is. So the reason I wanted you to come along was we can sit here looking at charts all the time. We can listen and discuss policies, but you're at the front end of the business and you're tasked with doing this and delivering this. And it's trying to understand from your point of view, what is it that's getting in the way? What do you think's happening? What are your options and solutions? So this isn't, so you've not come here to say, why are you at this point? It's like, where are we all? What, because it reflects on the whole organisation. Because if we end up at the top in Q1 for the worst performing sickness, it's not on one person, it's on all of us. You know, they will, you know, and why is that? You know, we're doing the worst in relation to the Welsh brigades. We're now doing the worst in relation to 40 odd other brigades. So we need to get to understand why it is. And if short-term sickness is 5,000 or 6,000 days, long-term sickness is 25,000 days, we need to understand why the split and what are the factors that underpin it. So before we get into the discussion, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up, Chair, on building what you just said around the UAs, why some higher than others. And I think when you look through the charts, there's a significant difference, isn't there, between on-call and whole-time days lost to sickness. I think it's probably to do with the number of on-call stations within some of those UAs predominantly on-call.
Right, okay. So that's useful to have in context as to why that is. I mean, we've had a brief, we've had the whole report introduced to us. I mean, what are your observations? What do you think about what we're seeing? What would you want us to be aware of in terms of options, strategies that we might?
Kerr's got the detail and the stats and everything. So I think from my perspective, personal perspective, the people I'm dealing with, when they're trying to go back to work, is the availability of actual appointments as well. I got somebody at the moment who's they've got medical, I think it's the 9th, and they've been waiting 2 or 3 weeks and keen to come back to work. But it was, you know, part of the clear plan for them was to make sure they had that sit down with the service doctor to make sure they were okay to come back. So I think a lot of it as well is, well, not a lot of it, because we talk about big stats here, you know, is actually availability of appointments to actually book it. But that seems to all people as well. And I think, you know, my UA, with Kevin as well, my group manager is quite clear on if we can try to forecast, if we know when people are coming back, because we understand 28 days, you've got to see our health. So we try and forecast, we try to educate our staff as well, that if it comes up to 28 days, you know, try to preempt, try and get appointments in advance, you know, because come 28 days, I want a big fit, you can't see a doctor then for 2, 3, 4 weeks. So that's, you know, that's going to affect a lot of things as well, the stats.
So can I just start? So we're doing a piece of work around the 28 days. So, you know, the keep it working at the focus is on preventative and early intervention. So while we are, rather than waiting until somebody's actually been off for 28 days, we are now looking to introduce. So if we get a fit note after them being on for 7 days, to say that that sickness absence is going to extend beyond the 28 days, we will refer them immediately once we get that notification. So the referral will be going in before they've actually been off for 28 days.
So that's only if the note states that it's going
Yes,
to be.
so, yeah. Or if we've got any,
It's 2 weeks, 4 weeks again. It's always difficult for you guys to.
so there's a
So
potential that we will be getting them into occupational health before they've actually reached the 28 days.
So that's dealing with, say, long-term sickness, but say short-term sickness, someone's taken just a couple of days off because they don't, whatever. How do you feel the return to work interview goes? Because they can come back, there's no permissions to come back to work if it's short-term sickness. They're just back the next day.
I wouldn't get notified. I wouldn't get notified unless staffing notify me through. They automatically notify the group manager and copy in the station commander. So that's the only way I have notification of somebody going sick. So, and I tend to keep in touch with my staff anyway. So I don't get.
So you don't have a dashboard, you have no way of.
I haven't got a clear notification to say when somebody's sick.
Right now, how would you know how many people are sick in the station right now?
Just through my keeping in touch with my staff more than anything else. But
So we haven't got a system for letting you know.
I won't get notified now.
The dashboard would show being introduced. So you would do that, and you would be able to look at RAPs as well, would give you that understanding of potentially the long-term sickness with it as well. But in terms of the updates with P56 as a welfare update, the commander won't be included into that. So the update will put staff, and then they will forecast then potentially what the longevity of that sickness period is going to look like.
I won't get a notification of these things. That's something I'd have to go physically looking forward now. That's something I have to monitor.
Okay. Yeah. That's it.
So there should be, so when somebody reports their sickness absence, the form P55 would be completed. So there is an option on there for additional line managers to be copied into that P55. So I think it looks like a bit more of an educational piece with those who are completing the P55 and also P56 welfare updates. That's got the same options that multiple line managers can be copied in. So I think it's just for us maybe to do a bit of an educational piece around that.
So are these self-populating documents that would appear on a screen, or are these sort of paper-based systems?
No, so they're on online forms, which like I said, they'll be
Each one like thing will go into.
It's a workflow, isn't it?
yeah. So
Dashboard.
that doesn't go into the dashboard. That will come those forms then. So like Kev said, when they will automatically. So if they're a whole-time employee, they will automatically go to central staffing. But whoever's completing that form will have the option of selecting additional line managers to also receive a copy of that P55. So that should be happening. So I think that will be for us to educate our employees to make sure that is happening. And then when we get a P55, we input that data into our system to be able to collate the data,
Right.
relevant data.
Because one of the things that's really important in the relationship between staff and their line is the line manager relationship between that person and us. So the line manager is responsible for doing the return to work interview. What's your view on how those interviews are carried out? And how do you QA them? How do you know that they're taking place?
Unless I'm completing it for my watch managers, I wouldn't know.
Would you sample any of them?
Because I'm assuming under the data and everything else that's collated,
Right. So
you know, or unless I were to sit in on them, it's probably something that I could do. But
right.
That's not the standard sort of process.
And that's where the discrepancy lies within the policy as well, isn't it? So stage one, the intermediate stages would be that where it recommends that the SMs are doing it, but that would be having that information in terms of what the sickness looks like on the individuals. So it's joining up the dots and knowing if there's a trend with an individual in terms of how their sickness looks like when they take it. Is it consistently the same time every year? That's the information you need. And then that's probably where the commander could say, well, no, it's not the watch officer doing it. I'm doing it now because I need to have that conversation to remind the individuals, look, you're expected to be in work. Your attendance record isn't to where it needs to be. And I think that's the bit that the education side needs to do it. And if we flip back a number of years ago, when we went through promotional processes, we focused so much on sickness and monitoring and what that meant and how to manage it. There's definitely been a skill fade across the organisation. COVID hasn't helped all of this as well in terms of the exemptions as well. And I think it's that individual's responsibility in terms of what the policy is, of line managers, even to a point where we get experienced people, JOs, don't even know they've got a complete P56. And from an operational perspective, will the pain. So again, we address that. We're not getting people following the protocols, day 4 phone calls, day 8 phone calls. They're just not following. So again, it's going back, having those conversations with it. So there's a huge educational piece that the impact it has for staffing of not letting us know when they're coming back. And then that results then on not having the crew in to be able to grant public holidays. And there's and this is my sort of view from what I see and what I see as the contributing factors to it. There's genuine sickness, and then there's those who are using a policy or hiding behind a policy to take time off for it. I look at some of the stats and data. So I've done 5-month quarter review from last year to this year in 5 months, and the difference between the sickness levels is huge. October 24, we had sort of 8.5%, 928 shifts lost. October this year, 1,424 shifts lost. 13.12% sickness, and this is just WDS now, but ultimately 306 public holidays refused because I didn't have the right crew in, but ultimately it was 1,400 shifts lost. So if they were to work, I would have the opportunity to do it for it. So then that goes to the question, are people just now, okay, and you can see it as well, public holidays being submitted, retracted, and then a bit more further information, they book sick. So there's so much analysis that we need to do, and then those are the conversations. Okay, no, it's bypassing the watch officers now. It's the group manager maybe and the commander having a word. But there's a clear trend. You applied for a public holiday, you book sick when it was refused.
We did analysis. So we analysed 3 years worth of data around PHs being refused and then booking sick, and there wasn't a comparison. What we said is they don't bother applying for the PH now, they book sick anyway because they know it's not going to be granted. So we couldn't find a correlation in that because the pattern is they don't even bother asking, they'll just book sick.
So a couple of things. I mean, station commander, in the old terms, watch commanders, they used to be called junior officers. So station commander is the senior, first of the senior officers. And I guess the station commander is the senior officer present at the station. So I would have thought that you would have, I don't know, I think we're letting you down. We're not giving you the access to all the data and the systems that you should have available to you to be able to manage those issues. I think there's a bit about, if there's a really difficult return to work interview to do, I think the station commander who can sit in on it, but it's still the responsibility of the line manager to have that conversation. Because if it's a difficult conversation and say, oh, someone else is going to do it, that officer's not developing either. Because you, having had a hard conversation with someone, it will sink in to you as the person having that conversation. You will learn a lot from it as well. So I think you can have the higher management levels present in support, but there's that direct relationship that still needs to have that.
And the policy needs to change to reflect that.
Oh, right.
Because when you look at it, the table and the matrix sits with the station manager. And that's where you look at it, and it should be the watch officers that should be having those conversations. And then when you get to stage 2, which could be an informal verbal warning. That's when the station manager will come into it. But the initial stage is when you're at stage 1, it refers to an SM. And again, it should be the watch manager to have those conversations, and then they're set in the store out of what's expected in terms of the attendance. They're all over the policies, they're then having it, and
Yeah, and just to back up that element as well, I mean, we've got some really good managers in service, you know, as in supervisory managers, and, you know, we've got to start trusting them and actually put a bit of responsibility on them as well. But primarily, we've got to give them the education to make sure we do that, because we get people going into post, they're only there 2, 3, 4, 5 months and expected to do these things, when have they really got the, it's difficult to sort of to define experience, but obviously it could be a very experienced away from the fire service dealing with people. You know, it's having those difficult conversations, and it was very topical, having those difficult conversations with these people, but actually make sure they got the tools to do it in the first place.
So where are we with things like, because other fire brigades have situations where someone takes 2 or 3 periods of sickness, you know, short term, and then they get put onto, they have to go certificated after that. You know, 3 strikes and you're going to go on certificated, or what? How do we have proper systems for someone's broken their little finger, so they can't do operational work because they can't go up ladders, but they can come into the station on day shift or follow the. You know, I think day shifts they can do. Do we have meaningful work for them? Do we have a program?
it's changed so many times over the last course of years about we would have people on non-ops, then we wouldn't, and think. But when you look at the areas of concern, the outstanding work, SSRIs, OTPs, IAPs, etc., everything station-based, home fire safety checks, there's so much that we could potentially do in it. And I think it's that early conversation in terms of what the nature of the illness is, or why we can't be at work, to be agreed with occupational health and say, no, there's a stream of work you can do. This is the expectation, Monday to Friday. Now you'll be in work, being able to do that. And again, supporting in terms of what any additional needs they might need for recovery. And we all know that, and I know firefighters work, if they've got to work Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, their speedy recovery is pretty good when the following week they book fit. So there's an element that we've got to be able to do that. What we see as well is a change of stance. Sometimes when someone's been off for quite a period of time, it's amazing when the 6 months window comes into how proactive they are in having those conversations. Right, I'm ready to come back to work, and I want to come back to work and everything. And there's a process that's got to sit behind there with our health and everything. On top of that is a refit qualification. We then got a link with training. When we're at that stage, there's another 6 weeks to try and get the courses available. We can't book anyone on courses until we get them medically fit from our health. So all of that contributes. And I'm not saying it happens all the time, but there's some clever people knowing how to work the system by dragging their heels. Oh, I'm ready to come back, 28 days, knowing, well, it could take 3 weeks before they get an appointment with our health, which means now we can't physically get them back into work fully fit. So then it'll be the light duties option.
Yeah.
So again, it's using a system that allows them to do it, maybe where we should be challenging a bit more.
So I suppose there's a thing about modified duties, occupational health, signing people up. So you're not fit for firefighter duties, fine, but they could be fit for station-based duties, and making sure that the SOC Health fully understand the full remit of options for station-based duties to do all the things that you've said. So one of the other commissioners, Carl, he was the Chief Constable in North Wales, and on his staff survey, when they filled out because it's anonymous, one of the things that came up about sickness was people were frustrated that management weren't dealing with sickness effectively, because people knew people were however the system was operating, and they felt that they were coming in and they knew other people weren't, and then it seemed it was unfair on them. They felt
treatment.
Yeah, really unfair treatment. So they knew people weren't getting managed properly. So I guess the thing is, it's those conversations right at the get-go, but it's also the systems that allow you to, when I was a station commander, I knew exactly who was on sick, when they were off, who was on courses, whatever. I didn't have the same level of IT, but I would want you to have that information to hand, because anything happens at that station at Caerphilly, I would think you're the first person we're going to pick the phone up to. You're the senior management representative at the station, and therefore you should have access to those systems. I guess there's stuff about long term and short term. There's a thing about leave, but do you get a sense that do we have any particular health issues that we should be aware of? Because these high levels of sickness, we are now the worst performing brigade in the country in terms of sickness, and we've got some consistent patterns.
Yeah. So what can I add to that? And truthfully, is where it is. There's no consequences. Okay, so there's no consequences for someone booking sick because they can't get their leave off. And again, you just know the PHs, and ultimately this then causes another issue, is because they can't get time off. The only option is to book sick, and that is, you can see that's a trend that people are off, and then that's affecting those who do remain in work that can't get the time off. And then as our sickness figures, 78 people off last month for sickness, which is 78 public holidays times four again that I can't grant because I haven't got them in work. So it's become that acceptable. Well, there's no point in me applying for a public holiday. I'll just go sick. And what's evident now is we got the additional shifts running. So previously people would book sick. They book sick at the beginning of the tour, maybe the day before. We wouldn't. Day 4, we'd have a welfare check. They're still on the sick, and literally the day then before they come back in, they would book fit. Now they might book sick morning of their first day. Last night shift coming off, they're still sick, but they're booking fit because it means now on that 4-day period before they're back in, they're available to do the additional shifts. So the mindset of how people work and change, and we're seeing it, and that is a direct result where sometimes we're chasing for fit notes and booking sick. Now it's completely changed. Literally an hour after they've come off duty, if they've been in work, there's an email coming through that they've booked fit for duty, and it's because then they're making themselves available for the additional shifts. My proposal for that, they should not have been eligible because they were sick, but they went through the FPUs. It wasn't equality and everything, and
That's a trial at the moment, isn't it?
it is a trial, and we need to
So we
change that.
can tweak that to say if you were sick in the preceding 4 weeks, 4 months, you're not eligible. Okay.
I think just, if I mean, just to back up now, anyway, from my station perspective, I know that a lot of the individuals I speak to, they're quite open and honest and speak to me quite a lot about their personal lives, and there seems to be a lot going on, and it could be a contributing factor, the fact that if they wanted a PH, because whether it's right or wrong, they probably perceive it as they should be able to have it when they want it. And if they can't have it, are they going to go sick after that because of other issues, whether it be at home or personal issues or mental health? So it all adds up. It all causes a problem in the melting pot of the sickness. So.
And it comes down to basic maths, doesn't it? I mean, our FTE should be 680 personnel for WDS, and straight away when
I thought it was 664.
That's
644.
644 is the optimum crew and how it works, which is 161 for it again. But
Yeah.
we've over-established the 680 to allow us that buffer sort of thing. Straight away, then I've got 29 people that are off that are seconded, non-ops, etc., and a couple of other scenarios in it as well. So our current establishment is 677. So that puts me at 648. So I'm only 4 above a 161 for each watch to operate, but then I've got 78 individuals off. So my actual figure that I've got to sort of deal with all the risk critical training, public holidays, annual leave and everything, it's 570 people. So I haven't got that scope to give people time off. And then the only other option maybe they're available, and they think, well, and rightly so, as Julian said, it's their own time off that they're entitled to do, but there's important events and they can't get people to stand in front, so they just go sick.
So I guess, I mean, so I sit on an NHS board in England, and sickness targets are less than 5%. And even here, Cheshire at 5.16. So there's a lot to go at in terms of the level I guess there's a conversation about the establishment at the right level, because they have different factors. You have a factor for training, don't you? Training element, a sickness element, all those bits and pieces. But when we're running 36 over establishment, that works out, I don't know, I'm ballparked here, 750,000. It's a lot of money just tied up in over establishment.
I think I worked it out with on costs, it's 2.2 million with on costs, and that doesn't take into training costs, PPE costs and everything as well. And
Yeah.
and then when you offset that up until recently, we were anywhere between 50 and 60 every month. Then almost those 36 people that in really for resilience don't give you any resilience. And bear in mind with the amount of emotions and secondments as well, that's already taking you down to your figure, and your actual figure that we've got is the 570. And just to give you a bit of history, the 161 that we use on a daily basis to it doesn't factor any sickness. So up to 26 at any one time on annual leave. That will fluctuate between 24 and 26 depending on long service entitlement. What then amplifies that is if people transfer watches and we've got to on leave, so potentially that could put it up to 30, 35. 10 always allocated for training, DITs, high risk training. And then you've got your surplus then that would actually cover for your sickness, your care dependence leave. So in reality, if you didn't have that, you would have 15 on average that should be able to cover short-term sickness, long-term sickness, and any potential public holidays. But the reality is that you're already 78 short, so you've got no scope. And it's about maintaining the baseline figure of 120 for optimum crew and all the appliances. And that's where we're struggling to obviously utilise flexible rostering.
You know, and the other contributing factor here as well is other departments. Whereas we put in adverts out for temporary secondments, and again, I think it's great that our frontline staff get as many opportunities as possible. But what we find is these people go into these departments, but nobody ever backfills a firefighter's post. So what you find is then there's always shortfalls, and even just on mine alone now, my station alone, I got 4 people on the promotional trail with crew managers. 3 of them are off station. It's not a different department, but off station. That leaves my station then 3 firefighters down. So straight away that has a knock-on effect to the total levels, the sickness and everything else, and also then it's obviously frustrating for them because the shortage on the watches. So every department we feed into, there's never an opportunity to backfill it at station level. So by going days regular, we're always getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and unfortunately, Kev was there then.
Right. Okay. Right. So the purpose of this wasn't to resolve it all within this meeting. It was to get some insight from your perspective as to what's happening, and it's been really useful. So a couple of things. First of all, thank you for coming up. Appreciate you've got plenty of jobs as well, but it's useful for you to see how we view this and some of the stats and figures. I bet you probably didn't know where we sat within us in England and Wales. So the data shows us trends, and these are things that we look at. I mean, ideally, a lot of this stuff should be accessible to you at some point, and when we get all these systems up and running, people will be able to see these things. I guess there are some things that we can do, looking at modified duties. I always think the 9-day fortnight is quite an incentive to get back to work. There are lots of things, I mean, but also as part of the paper that we went through, there are issues and support for people with mental health. They can get referrals through occupational health. We've got, and we looked at, didn't we try a system about getting people who are long-term fast-track through private medical?
There's
a fast track. So we are trying to do something, but essentially, I guess the issue that you're talking about, Kev, is the numbers, the requirements on the rigid numbers, 161 down to 120.
120, which is 5 on all appliances, bar code central. So that is we obviously our goal to go to. Anything below that is win. Obviously, firefighter safety is compromised. So that's the challenge. Long term, we can plan. It's the short term that we just don't know. And I'll give you an example from weekend in tomorrow. I've had 30 individuals across Red Watch just booked it.
How many?
30. 30. And that's 120 shifts. So I've already factored in allowing people public holidays and got additional people working. I'm now in a position I've got to cancel those because they've got to maintain 120. And that is just it's a rolling cycle.
I know that there's a COVID norovirus. Is there a pattern in that?
It's the sickness, nausea, again, so some of potential long-term 28 to 2 years.
You're talking about 18%, 19% sick leave.
It's huge for it, and again, some is probably genuine as well, but also I know Red Watch now are coming up to Thursday, Friday, so they're working weekends. And when you do a bit more dive into it, you can probably see your sickness slightly goes up as we approach weekends, and then it drops back down. I also know that as we approach Christmas, we've got holidays coming into it, I know my sickness level will drop, because you've got those that potentially be doing double time, but also if they're sick over the bank holiday, there's 3 there, they'll lose their bank holiday. So I guarantee I'll see a reduction in the short-term sickness. Long-term, I know it's planned for.
Useful just to see those stats come, we collate those, what happens, look at the trends and background. Okay, right, so thank you very much for coming up. It's been really useful for me. I'm sure it's been useful for our committee to get perspective that you've got. Perhaps if we see you again in 3-4 months' time, or a chance for us to sort of digest this and then come back to you and say, right, what's different, what's changed, is it all the same, has it got better, has it got worse, what have you noticed? So yeah, thank you. You can stay for the rest of this meeting, or you can do whatever you need.
It's personally, but
Now, we're going all day.
Yes, if we're going to bring this back, so the next meeting is in March, rather than expect Natalie to write another humongous report, could we maybe just have the stats as a standalone to talk to, rather than Natalie, you have to write yet another report. So just trying to sort of manage expectations. I think you're absolutely right. Rechecking the stats would be really helpful, but I don't think you need everything that's in this report.
Thank you. Right, okay, thank you. Thanks. There's a lot going on. I saw you take copious notes.
Yes.
Right. That is why I don't want them to come in. Okay, moving on then from the work we're doing to the forward work programme. So you talking to project?
Well, just in case you have any questions, really. So it's the items that we've previously discussed pre-me. I think everything is pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, you've got the sort of catch-all at the end of page 93, which is a progress report on your terms of reference for people-related matters. So I think we're looking to sort of close down those recommendations at this meeting.
Okay.
Everything else, I think, is pretty much what you would expect to see at the March meeting.
Right. We'll just be putting in that stats report.
But I'll put in the stats report as well.
Okay. Yeah, then there's we will probably, not for the committee, but we should probably have a discussion to make sure this is on track to come in. We'd want to see it, the direction of travel, so that we know what's coming and rather than discuss it first time. Okay. I wasn't informed of any business items to report back to the Board of Commissioners. So we've got to take back the gender pay gap, the pay policy statement, and what's happening with the.
I don't think they're in the agenda for tomorrow because the papers were published. There has to be a gap between the papers. You approved today, so it'll go to the next available meeting. But we have got the sickness one already because you asked for that already to come. So it's coming back tomorrow. So you can give them maybe a bit more insight from your deep dive today.
So in terms of the requirements in the gender pay gap to report to Welsh Government.
We have to publish it on our website.
Yeah, just go to the website.
And notify HMRC.
Yeah.
When do we have to do that?
March.
So we got, that's good in time. We've covered reflections on the meeting. This is for you. All there.
Really useful. It's fascinating to sit and listen to what everyone else does. So I found it really useful.
Apologies, you didn't have a name tag. I
That's
wasn't
okay, that's
expecting you,
fine.
so
No, I
that's
was
fine.
Gemma. 'Cause, yeah.
I was thinking, I couldn't work out. I
Gemma's
looked back.
temporarily changed role,
Okay.
so I stepped up to do
Well,
Gemma's.
thank you.
Okay.
Do you think then it'd be useful for other members of managers, one person just per meeting, just to come in and sit and observe? Just
Yeah, I think that would be quite good. Plus it myth busts, oh, I've got to go in there now because you've sat in as observer, so you know what to expect when you come in.
And the other,
their own development.
Yeah.
I think we could absolutely arrange it. And I also sort of noted to myself, we're going to be rolling out some training on the new report template, which we're going to use for next year. And I think part of that, we can do a standalone, right, you've been asked to present a report. These are how these meetings work. This is what the way we normally do it. So just to give people a bit more confidence, so when it's sprung on them,
Yeah.
they're not thinking, gosh, what's expected of me. So I absolutely take that away from them.
So I think there's if people, when they're doing their first report for us, copy paste from the previous report, they look for it, and then that's fruit from the poisonous tree. So the danger is that there's a way to writing reports. They don't necessarily have to be long, they just have to be to the point, and they need to be balanced. As we've just discussing the good and the bad. Whatever. So that skill of being able to do it, it's an expectation that people can write a report on the subject matter.
We're actually, one of our L&D managers actually working up a module in respect of report writing, so tying in with what Amanda was saying.
Well, we've been working on it together, but what we're going to do is bring in Alison, I think yourself,
Yeah.
to the staff handler as well, and Rianne as well, to make sure that the language is consistent in all our reports, the same abbreviations.
Yeah.
It's all those little details that can be missed. So we've got, so Tanya and I have got one PowerPoint ready to go, but we didn't want to press go and put dates into people's diaries until we cross-checked with everybody else.
Because one of the things from my point of view is that we've got 6 or 7 reports in it. When you're speed reading, if they're not in a similar format, it knocks you off track. And then other committees, when we get to the Board of Commissioners, they've come from 4 or 5 different committees. And if they're not in a similar format, then that knocks you off as well. So it's about being consistent, and the more consistent you are, the easier it is to write the report, because you know exactly the format that you're going to have to put these things in.
And actually having a new template forces everyone to start from scratch this time, which is fabulous. And we can get rid of all I don't want any more references to Fenella Morris, with respect, that was 2 years ago. We need to focus on the here and the now and the ahead. So it's just getting rid of copying and pasting the old narrative and starting again.
So that's the structure of the meeting. What about how it felt? Do you feel it's open? Do you feel you get a chance to make your point? Do you feel it's the challenge is okay? It's not sort of like you got nailed. You've got asked and you've got the opportunity.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to write notes because I'm used to writing notes in meetings, but I thought I'll write notes on mine, but I don't necessarily need to write notes on the other areas, but I'm aware of them. So I know the sickness issues that we have at the moment and what Matthew's trying to do, the good and the bad, to try and get things changed on DICE. So it was interesting to come in and have that, but I didn't need to sit here for the whole time going, I've got to write that down. I need to report that back to someone. So I found it quite strange, relaxing, in as much as my bit was stressful. I was lucky that I was first.
I'm going to quote that.
Yeah.
I found it relaxing coming to the meeting.
Yeah.
I do an actions email afterwards, so I'm capturing all the actions, so everybody gets the actions.
So once I've spoken about what I needed to, harder for everyone else, because obviously they still had to wait. But I found, right, I've done my little bit now, and I can nod along with what they're saying, because I agree, but I'm not the interactive person that then needs to still speak, and it was nice.
Great, thank you. Can't wait to tell Lady Wilcox. Finance and audit related.
In terms of, it's not feasible, because ideally I'd love all the business partners to be in here, but it's just not feasible. Business as usual. Rotating, also it's recorded, so there's opportunities to view the recorded session, to know what to expect when you're coming in. I mean, Matthew was a rising star there, wasn't he? I mean, in terms of but yeah, absolutely well done. Thank you ever so much for the work that's gone into preparing. I do appreciate the work.
Different being in the room, as opposed to watching.
Yes.
Because one of the things that you can see in the room is the looks, the non-verbal cues that go around, or how people just, you can sense it differently in a room.
I struggle with people on Teams because you don't get that. There's a space now I can speak, whereas in a room you do. So, yeah, I think being together in a room is easier.
Right. Okay, so the last thing, this is your last meeting, isn't it?
People committee, yeah.
Yeah. So wish you all the best. That's why it was relaxing today. You want to create the right environment. Yeah, that was. We're going to go back to how it. Cheers. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, it's good.